The gunning down of rapper AKA Kiernan Forbes and his friend Tabello Motsoane outside a Durban restaurant on Friday is being investigated as an assassination. This is the word, of course, according to our Transport Minister, Fikile Mbalula. Let's speak now to Jenni Irish-Qhobosheane, a researcher at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. Jenni, thank you so much for joining us. The video of this killing is doing the rounds. It does, I would imagine, give researchers such as yourself an opportunity to really see how it all played out, grim as it is to watch. Does this double murder have all the hallmarks of a paid hit?
It does appear. I mean, while the motives are unclear at this point, and exactly the circumstances might be unclear, but it certainly does appear from what took place on the evening that it actually bears very strong resemblance to an organised hit or targeted killing by professional hit squad people.
You know, if one watches the video, and we've made a decision on ENCN not to play it, it's just awful and insensitive to play it, but it is important to see how it is conducted. Someone gets out of this white car and literally goes straight up to AKA and points a gun at his head and kills him. Is this commonplace? I mean, we know about the assassins within the taxi industry and that sort of thing. I'm just trying to get a sense of how prolific guns for hire are in South Africa.
I think they are. I think they're incredibly prolific. And I think we've seen that what started off initially as hitmen that honed their skills in the taxi industry, they've now started to hire themselves out to a number of different, for political killings, for organised crime killings, for revenge killings, for a number. So we have a pool of hitmen, and KwaZulu-Natal is been one of the places where these hitmen have proliferated, and also it's been the place where we've had the most significant number of hits taking place.
Why would a paid killer choose to do it in a busy area where there are potentially quite a few witnesses?
I think that what we're finding more and more is that many of these hitmen for hire, or izinkabi as they sometimes referred to, are quite brazen. So a lot of the hits have taken place in public spaces, sometimes even in broad daylight, with them having very little fear of actually the repercussions of being identified in those hits.
And how much are they paid?
Well, it varies. It depends who you're targeting, how difficult the job is. So a hit can be anything from as small as 5,000 Rand up to as much as 150,000 Rand, depending on who the target is, how sophisticated the hit is. But hitting people up close is very often a tactic of these hitmen for hire. Many of them will make use of firearms such as what they refer to as such as a 38 special, which actually allows them. It has quite high firepower, but it also is easily concealable, and they can walk right up to a target and pull it out and take that target out.
Yeah, which is exactly what we saw in that video with AKA. I didn't see what happened to his friend, if it was the same modus operandi. I'm not sure if you were able to see that and if you have any more information about that.
No, it's unclear whether he was just a victim of circumstances and he was being taken out alongside it, or whether he was also one of the targets as well.
You say that these killers are just getting more brazen. But not only are there eyewitnesses and cameras, surely they would choose a quieter place because the risk of them being found is higher. Or do they just simply not care? They don't believe the police?
One would think that's the case, but we've had a number of different hits where it has taken place outside schoolyards during a time when people are dropping off their children, where it's taken place on public roads as somebody is driving out their driveway. It does seem that these hitmen are becoming more and more brazen in the way in which they're carrying out these hits.
And I'm not sure, you know, if this is related, you know, because we've seen a spate of mass murders recently. You know, we've seen the tavern shootings, that takes us back to last year. We know, of course, of the Zama Zama killings, but also we've heard of the birthday party killing, a number of people gathered together in one area, just gunned down. Johan Berger last week of the Institute for Security Studies, he says that we are becoming a gangster state, a mafia state, that we are basically on the precipice of that. Do you agree with him?
Look, we haven't referred to South Africa as a mafia state for a variety of different reasons. But what we do believe is that we are at a tipping point, that many of these crimes are being carried out by highly organized groupings. And then when it comes to dealing with organized crime in this country, we are at a tipping point. And we need to address it. Otherwise, we are going to spiral down a rabbit hole that we really don't want to be going down.
So how do we address this? We had an interesting clip from former cop Jeremy Veery. He's been consulting for Gun Free South Africa, and he believes that we need to bring back the provincial national firearm investigation units. Do you agree with him? And if so, and what else do we need to do?
I think there's a variety of things that we need to do. I think that as a country, and specifically when one looks at the criminal justice system, I think we need a very comprehensive and holistic strategy to deal with the rising organised crime that we are facing in this country. And I think that that's got to be, and then the implementation of such a strategy becomes critical. But I think in addition to that, I think where Jeremy is correct is that we do need to look at gun violence, and we do need to look at the availability of firearms, and particularly the availability of illicit firearms in this country. And for us, we need to start looking at where the sources of those firearms are and being able to cut down the availability of firearms by dealing with the sources of those firearms. And we've identified a number of different sources. Historically, the sources for illicit firearms and ammunition would have been firearms smuggled into the country from conflict zones in the region, or they would have come from conflicts that had taken place in South Africa itself. But what we're seeing is increasingly the type of firearms being used by organised crime syndicates are firearms that are newer and coming from more domestic sources. That's not to say that we don't have weapons smuggled into the country, but we also have a significant number, if not the majority, of firearms flowing into the pool of illicit firearms are coming from domestic sources. And those would be three particular sources. Civilian firearms that are lost or stolen. So that would be licensed firearm owners who lose or have their firearms stolen from them. The police and army, and that would be both police-issue firearms as well as firearms under the jurisdiction of the police and army. And one only has to look at the case in Norwood just recently where 178 firearms went missing from their evidence stores. And then firearms from other government departments, which is a bit of an unknown entity. But according to our information, there are approximately 1.3 million firearms in the hands of state entities. The police and army have less than half of those firearms. So there are a significant number of government departments that own and possess firearms and are pretty unaccountable for what happens to those firearms. They don't even report in their annual reports how many firearms they possess and how many are lost and stolen. But information that we've been gathering is that a significant number of firearms come from other state departments and entities.
In September 2021, top detective Charles Kinnear was gunned down outside his Bishop Lavis home. We understand that he was looking into collusion with illegal gun running, potentially involving members of the police. We know that last year a report into this, I think by IPID, was kept under wraps because it potentially had the names of high-ranking police officers. Jenni, to what extent, I mean, I don't know how easy it is to answer this question, but if you think of someone like Charles Kinnear, a good cop trying to sort this problem out, gets gunned down, a report held under wraps because potentially there's some very high-profile police names there, to what extent are police part of the problem?
I think that organised crime flourishes because of corruption. And corruption allows organised crime to be able to operate with the brazenness with which it's operating. And when it comes to the police, I mean, there have been significant instances where where firearms and corruption around firearms have been cited for the last 10 years, with very little action or consequences taking place as a result of that. Okay, we had the Prinsloo case and the Prinsloo arrest. But apart from that, there has been significant losses of, for example, firearms, where there has been a degree of impunity, where people have not faced the consequences of the loss of those firearms. And then there has been serious corruption where dockets have gone missing, where dockets have been, where police have warned people about an impending investigation or raid. And I think we do need to, as part of our strategy against organised crime, look at the whole issue of systemic corruption that is taking place within the police.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Jenni Irish-Qhobosheane, researcher at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime, speaking